Welcome to the Wingman Show. Welcome to the Wingman Show. My name is Drew Brown, and my wingman, my man, the number one guy I know, Dr. Paul Thompson. What's up, brother? Welcome to the Wingman Show. My name is Commander Drew Brown. My wingman is Dr. Paul Thompson, and we are floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you two badass jet pilots, rumble. Welcome to the Wingman Show. How you doing today, Dr. Paul?
I'm doing pretty good. I feel very good today. It's going to be a good day. Rained hard last night, but it's going to be pretty today.
Oh, it's going to be a great day. And let's start off our show with what we do always, our quote. Education is one of the blessings in life, and it's one of its necessities. Let me say that again, because you know we're all about being educated. Education is one of the blessings in life and one of its necessities. And that was by Malala Yousafzai. Malala Yousafzai. Great quote. Great quote. You know, Dr. Paul and I believe that if you're educated and you have knowledge, you can do anything in this country. You can do anything in this world, actually. All right. Well, you know, the media says if it bleeds, it leads. Well, the Wingman Show doesn't do that. We try to bring good news. We want you to feel better at the end of our show than when you started our show. So the first one we're going to go with is Bob Barker died at 99. So you're probably going to say, well, that's not good news. Yes, it is. If you live to 99 years old, you're one away from my goal of 100. So that's great news. What a great life. But the reason we're doing Bob Barker, Dr. Paul, is when I heard the stories and I started looking into it and reading it, Dr. Paul, Bob Barker not only taped 5,000 shows of The Price is Right, he was a Navy pilot flying off aircraft carriers when he was young. Did you know anything about that before this, Dr. Paul?
You know, I'd heard that about 25 years ago in some interview he was having. And he mentioned that. Never knew it. You know, his personality, I just knew him as a guy in a game show because he hosted shows for most of his life. But he said he did that. I had no idea. And I looked at it, and it's kind of interesting. He was this is during World War II. He never really saw any action, but yeah, he was trained to be a fighter pilot. Very interesting.
Yeah, there are two kinds of pilots in the world, Dr. Paul. Ones that fly off of ships and ones that wish they could. and Bob Barker was one of those who could fly off ships. You know, he also hosted Miss America and Miss Universe. And do you know he stopped doing that because he was a big animal rights activist, very big animal rights activist. And he quit both of them because they were giving the women fur coats. And he said, if you give them fur coats, I'm not doing it anymore. That's pretty cool, huh, Doc?
Yeah, now that you mention it, I do remember him. I remember him doing Miss America. I don't remember the Miss Universe. But yeah, he quit suddenly and he got into this thing about animals. And he'd always end the show saying, you know, spay or neuter your pets. That became a thing. I never really watched The Price is Right that much. A few times, you know, come on down, and, you know, to get you all hyped up and you know, and all that.
Drew Carey, my namesake, is now hosting it. I remember when he took over.
Yeah.
All right, Dr. Paul, check out our badass jets. Look at my F-18. My F-18 is super, super bad. What do you got there behind you?
It looks like, I guess it's a couple of A7s to the left and the right and one in the center. I thought it's a nice picture. I guess you can do that with any airplane, but it's cool. Both are airborne. I like yours too, going down the valley on I wouldn't call it a low level, but almost a medium level.
Well, anybody who doesn't know this, Dr. Paul flew those A7s that are behind him. I'm an A6 pilot, but those badass A7s behind him, that's what he flew. So everybody, thank you so much, especially our frequent flyers who listen to us all the time. Thank you so much. If you watch us on YouTube so you can see all the video, let's do that again. If you watch us on YouTube and see the pictures that we put on our show and some videos, please do us a favor and subscribe. If you check us out on Instagram or Apple Podcast or iHeartRadio, write a nice review if you like the show. But please always know that you can go to wingmanshow.com and get our newsletter. Our newsletter is called The Gouge. And in the Navy, The Gouge is insider information. And Dr. Paul loves to say, but it's legal. You know, Martha Stewart, she had got insider information, but she went to jail. So she kind of got The Gouge. But The Gouge, wow, just write us. And also, we have a flow line. That means if you want to ask us a question, go ahead and write Dr. Paul and I. You can write us at wingmanshow.com. That's wingmanshow.com. Dr. Paul, you love that Gouge?
I like the Gouge. Gouge is good. Gouge is, everybody needs the Gouge for something. It's all, you could also title it, you know, so now you tell me, you know, good information you'd have liked to have gotten before. If you had the Gouge, you wouldn't have to say that. You'd know that. Little tips and techniques to make life easier, basically.
That's right. We learned that, and the Gouge was important in the Navy. They tell you little things about flying your jet that the book might not have said that helps you a lot. So let's start off our great show today with the best small towns in America. Now, in order to be a small town, you had to have a population of 25,000 people or less. So we're going to start off with America's best small beach town. Here it goes, Dr. Paul. Boca Grande on Gasparilla Island in Florida. The best beach town in America. What do you think about that?
Boca Grande, I have no idea where that is. Can you help me out? Where is it? Like to the south? Is it near Key West? Or where
It's
is
an upscale, down-to-earth community on the Gulf of Mexico. It's called the tarpon capital of the world.
Okay.
The runner-up to that was Port Aransas, Texas. And you know where that is. You should,
Yes.
because it's right near Corpus Christi. And
Yeah.
I learned how to fly T-28s in Corpus Christi. And that was one of the greatest experiences I ever had, to start finally flying an airplane all by myself.
Yeah. Yeah, that part of Texas on the Gulf is pretty nice. I spent a lot of time in Corpus Christi too. I did like it.
Okay, you ready for this? America's best small mountain town, and that's Highlands, North Carolina. You know where Highlands, North Carolina is?
I think there's an aviation community up there. I think there's an air park or something. It's up in the mountains.
It's only 2 hours away from Atlanta.
Yeah, I think it's up in the mountains. Yeah, I think I've heard of it.
And the runner-up to that is Red Lodge, Montana. And that's right near Yellowstone. It's actually at the Yellowstone National Park. It's at its northeast entrance. Dr. Paul?
No, I never been there. Never been in Montana.
Myself either. America's best small lake town, Grand Marais, Minnesota. Now, when I saw that, I love Minnesota, and I think the people are great in Minnesota. But it's a great small lake town, but what, 3 months a year? It's cold as hell up there.
It gets cold up there. That's the first time I heard the term ice fog. And it exists. Ice fog is pretty cold when the ice, you get ice and fog. I think I saw it in Alaska a couple times and England a couple times.
The coldest I've been was actually in Minnesota. I remember I had a pinhole in my jeans, and it felt like somebody was sticking a knife in it. The water in my eyes were freezing. The snot in my nose was frozen. It was really bad. It's really cold up there. But that's why I guess God made it so pretty up there, because it's called the land of 10,000 lakes.
Yes. Most of them are frozen.
Yeah. The runner-up to that is Wolfboro, New Hampshire. And it gets cold up there. So that lake town must be up for grabs for 4 months a year.
Yeah.
This is a place that doesn't interest me at all. And that's America's best small desert towns. And the winner was Kanab, Utah. Kanab, Utah. And the runner-up is Yucca Valley, California. Dr. Paul, I don't know about you, but desert doesn't do anything for me. Matter of fact, I used to fly over the desert in the Middle East, and I used to see sand for miles and miles and miles. It was almost scarier than flying over the ocean, because I knew if you punched out over that sand, nobody would ever find you.
Yeah, lots of sand. I mean, you look at maps, you look at borders, And I think the borders can change based on how the sands drift from one country to the other.
And our next one is America's best small food and culture town, which is very interesting. And that's Los Olivos, California, with the runner-up being McCook, Nebraska, believe it or not.
Okay. Well, that's a little bit different than Brooklyn, New York.
A little bit different. And our last one, and I love going to spas, but America's best small spa and wellness town, right there in Aurora, New York. How about that? And the runner-up is in Girdwood, Alaska. But Aurora, New York is where Mackenzie Childs, I don't know if you know that, but it's a very expensive housewares company. Mackenzie Childs is in Aurora, New York.
No, I don't have expensive houseware. Never heard of that. But I think I've heard of Aurora, New York. It's upstate also. Everything's always upstate. You don't know where it is.
Yeah, and people who don't know about New York, upstate New York and New York City are two different places. They're worlds apart.
Yes.
Matter of fact, New York State, I always said, was one of the prettiest states in the country.
Yeah, especially around the fall. It is really big. And it's a huge state. You don't realize how big it is. If you want to drive from New York, say, to Buffalo, driving miles is about 400 miles.
Yep. You know, whenever you meet somebody and you say from New York, they first ask you the city. And then if you come from the city and the other person comes from upstate, it's almost like you came from two different places.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Dr. Paul, college. You know, we talk about education all the time. We always talk how good education was for us and that was the key to make us successful. So you've heard of literature, haven't you? Have you ever heard of Swiftature?
No.
Well, you're not going to feel good when I tell you what Swiftature is. A college in Belgium is now offering credited courses in Taylor Swift's lyrics. So they are going to actually study the lyrics of Taylor Swift. Now, Harvard did that, I think, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago for Tupac's lyrics. What are you going to do when you send your kid to college paying all these thousands of dollars and she's taking or he's taking Swiftology? Or Swiftature is what I should say.
Well, the first thing I think is that I need to design my own college course, a series of courses. If you're spending, I'd say, serious money on any of this stuff, it indicates probably one of two things. Either you just have a lot of money, and or you have a lot of time in your hands, and you're kind of misguided. If you're going to college, that's a time you're probably younger in life. That's the time you should be getting the most you can out of things. If you just want to be an interesting person, just go talk to somebody interesting. That's crazy, in my opinion. But to parallel that, I think it was about 35 years ago or so, there's some college or colleges were actually offering a course. It was on Star Trek. And it was the meaning of life as given by Mr. Spock. And they had little lines, and what did this line mean in this thing? This is a long time ago. It's still crazy, but they actually offered a course then. I don't want to say the college, but it was more than one. It was on the West Coast. I think you should be doing something that's primarily in the sciences, or the sciences and humanities. I mean, if it's a course, if it's part of something bigger and greater, but it's like you and me sitting down and talking about the meaning of an episode of Leave It to Beaver.
Yeah, but Dr. Paul, it's an elective. And when you and I were in college, and if we needed to pull a grade point a little bit, you take an easy elective.
Okay, an elective, as long as it's not a degree.
No, it's not a degree.
Okay, all right. No. You have a little fun. But if you're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in college costs, 5 or 10, 20 grand on rap lyrics, why don't you just look at the rap lyrics? That's just me.
Yeah, well, I just thought that was an amazing thing. You know what else is amazing? If I told you the 4th country ever to land on the moon was India, would you believe me?
Well, yeah, I would, because I see they just did that.
They just did that. India is one of the countries that Dr. Paul and I flew to a lot. And we didn't always see the nicest part of India because there's a lot of poverty in India. And when I read that India actually landed on the moon, it just blew my mind because I had a whole different vision of India's space program. And once again, I was wrong.
Yeah. Well, India's actually been launching rockets into space for quite a while. In fact, launching them for other people. But this last mission, they landed on near the South Pole of the moon. And I think they're the first ones to do that. But they
got closest to the South Pole where they did most experiments.
Yeah, I saw, getting to the moon. So they joined the U.S., Russia, and China getting there. I think India, the next mission, they say they want to have a manned mission to the moon. But it's significant that they believe the South Pole of the moon has a lot of frozen water, and eventually that could be used to generate rocket fuel. If you can take that water and separate the hydrogen and oxygen in liquid form, and ultimately be able to go to Mars, and I think they want to go to one of Jupiter's moons and launch from there. So basically, if you could stair step your way, you wouldn't need enough fuel to go from Earth direct nonstop to those places. You could do a pit stop at the moon, just like you're taking your Tesla across country. You may not need a charge for the whole trip. You have to look at your charging stations. You can stop here and there, and that's the theory behind it. So good on them.
Good on them. Dr. Paul, we talk a lot about education, but there's something a little bit more. And I was thinking about this. Why are we successful? How did two Black kids from Harlem, New York become Navy jet pilots? How did we get to this point? And I started thinking about it because my parents were not like Leave It to Beaver. Leave It to Beaver and 8 is Enough and what was it? The Brady Bunch? The Brady Bunch. They screwed me up because I thought that everybody's supposed to have a problem in 1/2 hour to solve it. And then you have a maid that doesn't clean. And that's not my house. But my house gave me something different. Even though my parents were divorced and even though they were split, but my dad and mother were always with me. They gave me something. And that thing was called self-confidence. When I went out into the world, my parents, my grandparents, my tribe, they showed me and they told me and they raised me to believe I could do anything that anybody else could do. And if you add that self-confidence with an education, there's no stopping you. And a lot of people get stopped because they just don't think they're good enough. Well, I never had that. And when you add love to that, you become a successful person. When you have love and self-confidence of yourself, that makes success. And I don't mean egomaniac. I mean self-confidence. What do you think, Doc?
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of it depends. It can be influenced by the company you keep, the people you're around, friends, relatives, community I grew up in. Basically, at that time, the whole community everybody was supportive. Everybody was trying to do better and move up. There's no real dissension, even though a lot of things are happening, in the country and in the city. But there seemed to be like no limits. The only a lot of limits people would have would be self-imposed. So sometimes it's a battle we have that's raging inside. You may have the battle against the system. You may have the battle with a person. Sometimes you may have a battle with yourself. Those internal battles can be crippling. And you've got to have self-confidence. You have to have a vision, just you yourself, without a cheerleading squad behind you. That's good to have, but that's not always going to be there. You have to do the work. You have to be able to do some things, particularly for younger people. And it's important for young people to get this in their heads because there are going to be challenges and opposition, and slings and arrows that come with any endeavor in life, no matter where you are. You have to be able to put on a kind of a psychological raincoat or armor or whatever, repellent or something, and just cut through that stuff like a duck through water and just deal with the stuff at hand and not necessarily with the personalities.
Well, that's very true. And you know what that brings us to? It brings us to a wingman hearsay. From the 11 facts in life, under fact number 1, control your emotions. Control your emotions. I don't know, Dr. Paul, how many people are in jail, how many people have broken up marriages, have fights with their children because they can't control their emotions. And it's very important for everybody to know, when you start throwing words out there, it's like throwing nails into a board. Yes, you may say you're sorry and pull out that nail, but there'll always be a hole. You need to watch your mouth. You need to watch your emotions, especially when you get super mad, because that's when all the oxygen leaves your brain, and then you just start saying stupid shit. Control your emotions. Be responsible for your actions and control your emotions. Dr. Paul, please enlighten us.
Yeah, as you say that, it triggers one thing in my mind. A couple of people that I've known who don't know each other, who worked in prisons in different states, both said to me at one time, what they found with a large number of inmates, they have very poor impulse control. They use that term, impulse control. And it sounds like what you're just talking about. That doesn't excuse anything. But one was in Tennessee, the other was in Texas. One was with male prisoners, the other was with female prisoners, actually. You know, both people who were senior citizens, but they made the same observation years apart. So.
People, Dr. Paul, have really spent a lot of years in misery because of stuff that came out of their mouth.
That's right.
Stuff that they really didn't mean. They just were trying to be mean. Right. Well, you know, we have a frequent flow line. And when you write us at wingmanshow.com, you can ask us a question. And guess what? A guy asked us a question from Casper, Wyoming. He's a 20-year-old man. He attends the University of Wyoming, and he wants to be an airline pilot. And he was asking Dr. Paul and I, should he go military? Should he go civilian? And I'll start off with telling you there are only two kinds of pilots in the world, ones that fly off of ships and ones that wish they could. And I'm just saying that because I'm a badass Navy jet pilot. But the truth is, I didn't have any money to learn civilian, so that option was not for me. And if you want to know the truth, I didn't even know how to do that. I had no idea about civilian aviation. And the reason that I was hired at FedEx and became an airline pilot and retired as an airline pilot is because I was a Navy jet pilot. And the Navy gave me all my instructions. They gave me all my flight hours. And I gave them years of my life to pay them back for all the training they gave me. But the only way I know is military. And if you were going in, see what kind of jets you like to fly or airplanes. People fly in the Coast Guard, they fly in the Army, they fly in the Marines, they fly in the Air Force. But don't forget, there are only two kinds of pilots in the world. Dr. Paul, tell us about how to become an airline pilot.
Every time you said the only two kinds of pilots in the world, I'm thinking like, some people probably don't care for that too much, but I'm laughing too. Military and civilian. If you go the military route, realize that your primary responsibility is to the country and not to a particular airline. You're going to take an oath, you're going to have responsibilities, and that's to the nation and not to an employer. All right? It's a serious business. I don't want to get, too dramatic on it, but you're taking an oath to the nation, supporting and defending the nation. Okay? So that involves a number of things. If that's what you want to do, go for it, absolutely. And there's many civilian routes too. There's such a pilot shortage now that a number of airlines have their own flight training academies. Still, you got to get into one, and these things are really expensive. So there are colleges that you can go to. There are aviation-related colleges, but yeah, flight training now is it's a six-figure thing to get all your ratings. I understand. That wasn't the case, when I was coming up. I had kind of a hybrid thing. I had a private pilot's license before I got in, and I had a little summer job that paid for it. I paid my way for the first 40, 50 hours, which was great. But so you've got two options. If you go ahead.
Sorry. One of the things you can do as a civilian pilot, I know, you have to get your private pilot's license, and then you can get hours by being an instructor, instructing other people learn how to fly, and you can get your hours built up like that. And then you go work for a small airline, and you just work your way up because you need multi-engine and you need pilot and command time. And that takes a little while in civilian aviation. But these smaller airlines, that's who they hire. And they kind of just work their way up into the majors. Isn't that true, Doc?
Yeah, that's the case. There are a lot of schools that'll get you there. We know one of ours, a friend of the show, is the Luke Weathers Flight Academy in Olive Branch, Mississippi. It's one of the leading flight schools in the United States, and they've got people who are doing just what Commander Drew has said. They've started from nothing. Some become flight instructors, and a number are flying with the major airlines now, just in a few years. The school's only been open 5 years.
That's both of our friends, Albert Glenn, Captain Albert Glenn, who's been a big inspiration actually to both of us. What a great man. And Dr. Paul and I were talking about all the things that he's done and all the things that he's doing. I truly look up to this young man. I truly do, Dr. Albert Glenn. I stayed at his house when I came back to flying after 12 years of being gone. He let me stay at his house, and I went back through training.
Yeah. He's the ultimate wingman, actually. He's actually been a wingman of thousands of people, whether they know it or not.
I think we should call him Wingman of the Year.
Wingman of the century, actually. I'm giving the 21st century for sure.
All right, the Gouge. Remember what the Gouge is? It's insider information. So let's give you some Gouge on weekend warriors, the truth and myths about weekend workouts. So myself, I work out about 45 minutes a day, 5 days a week. And the truth is, some people don't have that advantage to be able to work out during the week because they have jobs, they have children, they have careers, they have school, they have things that they have to do, and they don't find time to work out. My first thing is you take your time for yourself first. Just like when you get paid, you should pay yourself first because you're the most important person you know. But if you cannot do that, they're saying that if you work out on Saturday and Sunday, you can get almost the same benefits. The issue is you have to work out at least 150 minutes. So if you work out 30 minutes a day for 5 days a week, there's your 150 minutes. Don't think you can work out Saturday and Sunday for 30 minutes at a time. It does not equal. But if you do 150 minutes, you're getting almost the same benefits we read.
Yeah, that's 125 minutes, basically. Break it up into 2 hour and 15, 20-minute sessions. I think it's better if you spread it out. But again, like you say, if you can't spread it out, something is better than nothing. Set a goal for yourself. One thing I'm trying to do, I tried to do yesterday, is to do, I think I'm in pretty good shape, but my squats are not so great. You should be able to squat in a low squatting position for a period of time. The arthritis in my knees kind of makes that hard. And these folks are saying you can actually do it. It just takes time to be able to go that low. Little kids can do it naturally. Little kids can do it. They do it all the time. And that's a good position to be in for a lot of reasons. Your back, your structures, everything, every part of your body. And I tried it yesterday, and I can do it, but I have to have my hands or fists on the ground. The goal is not to have anything on the ground. So I'm working on it. So that's my goal. We'll see what I can get done by the end of the year. If I can hold it for like 30 seconds. And I find I really can't do it. I can do hundreds of push-ups, but I really can't do that maneuver yet. So,
well, Dr. Paul, I'm going to give you some Gouge. How about that? Because when you said squats, my knees just started to hurt with the word squats. Okay. I found these two straps, patella straps, that I wrap around right below my kneecap, and I tighten them up real good. And guess what? It has alleviated the pain in my knees. I am not kidding. I can't believe it. You strap them real tight right around below your kneecaps. And it's worked for me, Dr. Paul.
Yeah, I've got that. I do have knee sleeves. Now, yesterday when I did it, I did not have them on. I finished working out. Now, I haven't tried it with the knee sleeve, so maybe I might be able to do it. I'm just doing it on my own. My goal is to be able just to do it with unassisted over time, just slow little pieces. That's my personal goal.
You'll reach it. Dr. Paul, You know, the name of our show is The Wingman Show. And the reason we call it The Wingman Show is because we know that we each have to have each other's backs. And this week, the wingman is an airline pilot. And I can't wait for you, Dr. Paul, to tell us this story. It's a wonderful story coming all the way from Tokyo to America. Who's our wingman, Dr. Paul?
Yeah, this is our wingman is a first officer for American Airlines named Mr. James Dannon. You know, sometimes online things can go viral for different reasons. A lot of times they're very negative things, bad trends, something happened, a TikTok, a this, that, or whatever. And, you know, just if it bleeds, like you would say, if it bleeds, it leads. A lot of stuff is like that online. Well, this was something online. It didn't bleed. It was good, and it should, because there was a little girl that was on a trip to Japan with her family. And she got back home. They went through the luggage, and her beloved doll was missing. So they looked through everything. They looked around. They couldn't find it. And they thought, I wonder if we left it at the airport. Well, the airport was Haneda Airport in Tokyo, Japan. Haneda, there's two major airports in the Tokyo area. There's Haneda and Narita. Narita, that we flew into all the time, was the international airport. But this is Haneda, and they do domestic and international. Well, anyway, the thought was they left this doll at Haneda. And the little girl was really distressed. And somehow this got online. It went from one person to another person to another person to another person. And it got to this first officer, James Dannon, something about Haneda Airport for American Airlines. And he flew there all the time. So on his own, he basically volunteered to see if he could find it. So on his own, he got in touch with Turkish Airlines. I don't know if they must have been flying with Turkish Airlines or something, with the staff at Turkish Airlines to see if they could find this doll. And you know, believe it or not, they actually found the doll. And he wanted to know if he could get it back. And they said yes. And it took him 2 trips. But on his own, he actually got this doll, brought it back to, I guess, Dallas, Fort Worth. I think he lives in Plano, Texas. And the little girl, Valentina Dominguez is her name, also lived in Plano, Texas. And he actually delivered it to her, handed it to her, and made her day. She was 9 years old, and it had this doll for three or 4 years. It was almost a part of the family. And it's a nice picture. We'll show the picture of them doing that. That's the example of someone going out of their way, going thousands of miles to do something for someone else.
That's a wonderful wingman story. Couple of things. When I was reading it, the Plano, Texas part, guess who else is from Plano, Texas? Drew Jacques Brown IV. Dr. Drew Brown was born in Plano, Texas, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
Richardson, Texas. Yes. So Plano's very near and dear to my heart. But I'm also looking at something. He was a first officer in American Airlines for 30 years. So people would say, why is he a first officer? People know about flying. How come he didn't move up to captain? Well, he did what I did. I wanted to be senior. I could care less about being a captain. I was a captain of an A6 intruder. I didn't care about being an airline captain. I cared about money and seniority and quality of life. Mm-hmm. And because I didn't go to become a captain, I became very high up in seniority. And for the last 10 years, I probably just picked my trips and flew them. So I understand that. Dr. Paul, I have to say this. Whatever makes you and our listeners happy, whatever is meaningful for you and our listeners, and whatever is beautiful for you and our listeners, may you have that today and forever. I pray for peace, Dr. Paul.
I pray for peace too. And again, we appreciate all those who listen, like, and share our message. Give us a like, a thumbs up, something to help the algorithm so we can get it out to more people.
Thank you once again, Dr. Paul Thompson, my friend. Thank you for your love, your time, and that's something that we won't ever get back. I want to thank all the listeners too. Thank you so much for doing the show, Dr. Paul. We're jamming.
Well, thank you, Mr. Drew, for inviting me on. Always good to talk to you. And ladies and gentlemen, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast or any of the podcasts. If you're looking at YouTube, They say smash the like button. Don't smash it. Just press it gently and refer to use as a link to all your friends. You can also look at us on our website, wingmenshow.com, WINGMEN show, SHOW.com altogether, wingmenshow.com. And we hope to see you in the future. Thanks again, Mr. Drew.
Oh, you're welcome. And we're still floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you badass jet pilots, rumble. May there be peace on earth and goodwill towards all men and women.